We're just going to start with a similar question, but just slightly different for both of you along the same line. So, Councilman Solomon, obviously, you've been on the council for 4 years. What is it about the job that makes you want to do it for 4 more? And what is your goal for the next term of your election?
Can I ask a quick question? Are we switching mics?
Yes, one mic per table.
So first, let me just thank John for moderating. Thank all the members of the DCNA for hosting this. Thank you, Jay, for this great exchange of ideas. And thank you to all of you and everyone in downtown for being here. So John's question is, why am I running for re-election? And I want to start with why I ran in the first place 4 years ago. Back when I first moved to Jersey City, a couple years after that, I got sick. I was diagnosed with many of you with glaucoma. And it was this community that really stood by and supported me, helped me through one of my most difficult times. Debbie and Sharondale at Gia Gelato with a free coffee to keep my spirits up. Aaron and Joel with a walk in Hamilton Park to keep my energy up. And I felt so supported by this community that I wanted to give back. And in particular, I wanted to get back around the politics of Jersey City. I had seen that, simply put, Jersey City deserved a government as good as its people, and it wasn't getting it. So I wanted to practice a new type of politics. I wanted to make sure that we in downtown guided the future of this city, not developers. So I promised 4 years ago not to take donations from developers here in Jersey City, and I've kept that promise. And in my time, we haven't passed big tax breaks. In fact, we've passed 0. And with that, we've moved projects forward that deliver 4 pieces of infrastructure. A new elementary school coming, new homeless shelter, new light rail station. I want to build on that work because we have to continue to make our community livable and affordable. We have to triple the number of affordable housing units built in the next 4 years than have been built in the prior 10. We have to get another elementary school built to deal with the massive overcrowding in our elementary schools. Overcrowding because developers plan the city, not because our community and our city planners did. We have to continue to fight to make our community livable. And that's why I want another 4 years to be able to continue to serve all of you here in downtown.
All right, thank you. So, Jake, along the similar lines, you have a job that affects people citywide. Why do you want to change that focus as you become a board council?
Okay, good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to thank you, John Heinis, for hosting. I want to thank the DCNA for putting this tradition together. And I want to thank James for the debate ahead. I moved here in 2005, the day after my last day of college at Montclair State University, here in downtown Jersey City. One of my first apartments was Dixon Mills. I currently live above the pedestrian plaza with Tyler at Grove and Morgan. I have fallen in love with Jersey City, and this is where I built my life and my home. During that time, I went to law school because I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. When I graduated law school, I got involved here at the local level, working for reform-minded Board of Education candidates. From there, I eventually was asked by the mayor to be the city prosecutor. And as the host mentioned, I've used that role to help people citywide, but also statewide. We've taken on some of the strongest landlords that have come into Jersey City from outside Jersey City, taking advantage of the most underserved people in the city. One of my first acts was decriminalizing marijuana, negotiating with the Attorney General for a case-by-case policy that had a reach in every corner of the state. And when COVID hit, the mayor tasked my team with enforcing the guidelines that kept us safe. And while I love that job and it does allow me to serve the entire city, I'm running in Ward E because I love the community I moved to in 2005, and I'm concerned about its longevity and its livability. We have serious issues in Ward E. We don't talk enough about the fact that we are a coastal community downtown. I lived through Hurricane Sandy. I was out of my home for 6 weeks, and I don't think we've done enough about flooding. And I want to be the council person that talks about sustainability and green issues. We have a serious issue with schools. I talked about being involved with reform-minded candidates 10 years ago. We succeeded in filling a lot of those seats with reform-minded folks, but we've lost that and we need to get back to it. I'm running to make sure that we stay affordable for everybody so that young people can move here the way I did in 2005, so the middle class has a policy that makes sense, and so that seniors can stay here in their homes. And that's why I'm running for board.
All right, thanks, guys. So now we're going to start with Jake. So let's start with this. This is obviously topical in light of a recent report from the Jersey City Times. The state law requires a reval every 5 years. What measure will you take to ensure that it is done in a timely and fair fashion?
I would, first of all, it is the law, and we went way too long without enforcing it for 30 years. Simply put, the council has a pulpit, and we need to use that to make sure we do the reval when it's required. Whether that's passing resolutions to push the administration to do that, or passing stronger ordinances at the local level to compel, however it is the state law. As a councilman, I would be completely committed to reval consistent with the state law because it produces the most equity. Some of the folks facing issues today with the most recent reval is because it went on for decades and decades. And so we really need to fight for equity. We need to make sure that we do the tax reval every 5 years.
Very good.
Yeah, back in 2017, before the reval act had been delayed 30 years and delayed purely for political reasons and political purposes. Right? I and my team door to door to inform seniors of the senior tax freeze, a policy at the state level that reimburses them for increases in their taxes, but one that no one in City Hall had ever bothered to tell seniors about. So we signed up dozens and dozens of seniors, and many of them I see now 4 years later when I'm knocking on doors who have been able to remain in downtown. Now we must do a reval in 5 years, that is the law, but we have to do more than that too. There is a state law that allows us to, after we complete this reval after 5 years, move to a system of rolling assessments. Now this is going to get super wonky, and we're all going to get bored and our eyes are going to roll in the back of our head. So I'll try to keep it simple, but the short version is rolling assessments are fair because 20% of properties are reevaluated every year, and all properties are estimated for their value. So you don't have to wait 5 years. You don't have to allow for political shenanigans to delay a future reval. Every single year, properties will be fairly assessed. So the moment we move forward on the 5-year reval in the next, which should be the next year, then we should move to this rolling reval going forward.
Very good. So let's talk a little bit. You want to say something further? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about climate change, what we can do on the local level. What question is homework as a leader in addressing climate issues in the area? What could your city use to be more active in addressing this threat to our city?
John, I had a history of environmental issues. As prosecutor, I investigated and prosecuted polluters at One Cave Point and drove them out of the city, and now the DEP has picked up that case. As candidate, I've issued a sustainability policy that's been endorsed by the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, and it calls for better stormwater management and more green initiatives in our construction. We have to separate our stormwater utility. We started that, but it's a 5-year project, $2.2 billion. We need to be aggressive in getting Build Back Better funds from the federal government so we can speed that up, because I'd approve we do not have a moment to waste on replacing our stormwater management. Also, as councilman, I would pass an ordinance requiring that any public works project have a pervious surface requirement so that all public works have the type of surfaces that allow stormwater to go into the ground and not flood. I also am calling for LEED certification in all new construction, providing incentives for those building that meet LEED certifications and improve energy efficiency for our residents. And, 4 years ago, we pointed out that our tree canopy was getting smaller, and it's still getting smaller. We need to address that because not only does the tree canopy affect temperatures and utility costs for residents and homeowners alike, but it also affects air quality, which we just learned during the respiratory pandemic, how important tree canopy is, but also tree canopy plays a major part in stormwater management. And I'm very proud to have that policy, and I look forward to being the green councilman for all of Jersey City.
Almost a month ago, or a little more than a month ago, when Hurricane Ida hit, that very night, went out and talked to my neighbors. And I talked to Sean and Natalia over on 5th Street. Their daughter's room had been flooded, total loss, have to start from scratch. And we have to continue to work hard to build, to make sure that we have a sustainable future so that this doesn't happen again for Sean and Natalia, that we put every policy in place. Now, I agree with Jake that we have to work on our tree canopy. When I started in 2018, there were roughly 100 trees planted. In 2020, over 550 planted across the city from data that the Fulton administration has released. Now, it takes time for those trees to grow and for their canopy to blossom, but we need to do more than that. So we tripled in the last 4 years, we have to triple again. We have to then create those permeable surfaces, make sure that sidewalks and roads are like sponges and soak up the water. And we have to build infrastructure. So for Sean and Natalia, we've been advancing a pump at 6th Street. That pump construction is just about to start. It's going to remove water from the sewer system so that their daughter's bedroom doesn't flood. We have to then get one built at 18th Street and then move forward with one at 2nd Street. Those comprehensive plans are going to help us address sustainability, but then we also have to be the leader to ensure that we reduce carbon emissions ourselves. And a key part of that is transportation. I've been proud to put and work with the administration and Mayor Philip on putting protected bike lanes in across downtown. That creates a safe carbon neutral option for our residents. We've been investing and hopefully getting a light rail at 18th in Jersey. There's a transit desert there, 20,000 people who potentially are going to live in that neighborhood with zero transit. We're going to make sure that that light rail station gets built to create mass transit carbon neutral option.
Sure, go ahead.
If I could respond, the cost of that light rail station would be $70 million. The parking tax, which is meant to expand public transportation, only is going to generate about 2 or 3. The councilman keeps referring to this light rail. He does it at debates and mail, but he really needs to offer the voters a way that he's going to pay for it.
Sure. So we're going to pay for 2 ways. First, as Jake mentioned, there is a tax that has been put in place on large parking lots. Mayor Philip called for that tax to be dedicated to the light rail station and then use that to bond. And the short rule is we're getting $5 million annual revenue, that I think you multiply by roughly 10 to 20, depending on the bond market, for the amount of bond revenue you can get back. But in addition, we changed the zoning in the area to guarantee that a future development is going to be able to place it there, and that developer is also going to put in the funds to create it. Therefore, meaning we're going to have a combination of capital revenue and private sector, and that combined is going to get that built for us in the next 4 years.
John, the councilman can't expect developers to build things when him and Rolando Lavera have supported IZOs that don't allow developers to give givebacks to the communities. Him and Councilman Lavera support the most strictest IZOs that would stunt development, but they also don't allow community givebacks to factor into the equation. We would have no incentive at all to require a developer to build a light rail station. So when we talk about these things, which are important, of course, I'm for expanded public transportation, we need to talk about them sensibly in a way that give voters a real view of what's happening.
In this case, the zoning was passed in May of 2021, so it is already in place.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. So we're going to move on to the next topic. So, we've obviously had a lot of conversations about public safety when we're talking about downtown. So let me ask you this, and we'll start with James this time. What does an ideal relationship between residents and police look like, and how would you help facilitate that over the next 4 years?
The relationship between residents and police starts with trust. It starts with residents feeling safe and secure that their police officers are doing everything in their power to keep them safe. And that is true for the vast majority of JCP. However, there are real problems that we still have that have not been addressed. We just learned, report about a week ago, that there are potentially members of a white supremacist group, the Oath Keepers, in JCP. Now, I'm sure that is going to be investigated and taken care of, although we can ask why proactive steps have not been taken to make sure that there are no white supremacists on our police force. But we do not have a systemic solution. And the systemic solution is a civilian complaint review that would allow independent, community-trusted leaders to have oversight of police misconduct, to issue reports, to investigate, to ensure that our community has trust that if there is an act of misconduct, it will have a fair and impartial investigation. We recently just learned that there was an officer who got drunk, got into an altercation, and discharged his service weapon. Instead of being removed from the force, he was simply suspended. That is not acceptable. That is what we have to change. Now, I worked with Assemblywoman McKnight to try to pass a bill in Trenton. I worked with Councilman Ridley to try to get a Jersey City version. Now, we've been stymied in part by police unions. In fact, Jersey City was primed. Councilman Ridley and I announced that we had come up to a compromise on that to the council, and it was stalled by a suit from Jersey City police unions. Now, I have every confidence we're going to beat that suit in court, and then we're going to advance the bill in Jersey City, put pressure on Trenton to give us the enabling legislation to create real accountability for our police force.
So for me, police and the community look like residents and police officers in the street solving problems together. I founded the first quality life police unit in Jersey City with the blessing of the Mayor and Public Safety Director Shea. And that police unit works side by side with code enforcement and the Resident Response Center to solve residents' problems. We've brought law enforcement into quality life issues that police had never been involved in, whether it was illegal construction affecting neighbors down on Barrack Street, whether it was infestation on Wayne Street affecting surrounding neighbors, or whether it was quasi-legal junkyard by the 6th Street embankment. And we brought police officers in and out into the field side by side with residents to solve those problems. My plan calls for expanded foot patrol for that very reason, and those officers would wear demilitarized, soft uniforms, because we're not going to fix the problems of policing if we, one, isolate police officers in new cruisers, and two, if we demonize them and don't expect that they can be better. They can be better. And I just want to be honest with folks. Yes, police officers should be accountable. And yes, if there are any members of the Oath Keepers, they should be held accountable. And the Attorney General, Andrew Burt, is indicating that there is an investigation. We should have every confidence in the Murphy administration to be handling that. When it comes to some of my answers, they may not be as exciting as the councilman's because I'm going to deal in facts. And the reality is civilian review boards right now in this moment are illegal as he's proposed them in the state of New Jersey. I was a public defender for 7 years. Do I believe we need civilian review boards? Absolutely. But do I think we should spend countless hours at council meetings fighting for one when the legislature hasn't passed the law yet to allow it? No, we should be solving other problems and keeping the pressure on the legislature to pass one. And that's the reality.
Anything further? Okay. All right, so let's move on to a different topic then. Let's talk a little bit about responsible development. So when you think about responsible development, we'll start with James. Do you think that there's any scenario where tax abatements should be given to incentivize developers to build low-income or affordable housing?
Sure. So let's start with the fact that affordability is the biggest problem I think facing downtown Jersey City. 50% of residents in downtown Jersey City spend too much, Jersey City as a whole, spend too much on their rent, burden. And so when I came in 4 years ago, I wanted to prioritize that. One of the things we did was go door to door, informing rent control tenants that they lived in rent controlled units and had a number of rights and protections. Hundreds, when we knocked on the door, did not know because landlords and developers were taking advantage of that, trying to push them out, not following. One of the folks I talked to, his name is Tanya Heinis, right? Tanya had lived in her unit for 3 years, didn't know it was rent control, and was being charged thousands of dollars in illegally high rent. She took her landlord to court, she got tens of thousands of dollars back, and now she's going to be able to stay in downtown Jersey City. Now I put a plan out to try to triple the number, the number of affordable units built in downtown. And we're going to use, to answer your question, John, every tool in our toolbox. In this case, we're going to prioritize using city-owned land. The city can sell that land to an affordable housing developer for a single dollar. You take the land cost out and you use that subsidy to maximize the number of affordable housing. So then you look at low-income housing tax credits with 4% and 9% tax credits. Then you look at the incentives that Governor Murphy has recently put in place through the new economic development plan. When you combine all of those tools, we are going to maximize the number of affordable housing units built here in downtown.
No, I do not believe there is any use at this time for tax abatements on the waterfront, and I'm very happy that they stopped in 2015. There has not been a tax abatement in Jersey City on coastline in Wardy since 2015 in the mayor's second term. We do need to think about how folks are going to stay here and affordability. My housing plan really focuses on the people between low income and $250,000 a year. The councilman's plan does not talk about the middle class or seniors. I propose creating a help desk in the Office of Senior Affairs to help seniors navigate the tax freeze because it is a problem and not enough take advantage of it. I think of my friend Sean Fattery nearby on Cole Street. I hardly think of him as a senior, but he is a senior. And he tells me he doesn't know what he's going to do when his fixed income doesn't match property taxes. I also am proposing a help desk in our Office of Historic Preservation to help historic homeowners modernize their homes to reduce utility costs. Right now, it is too hard for historic homeowners to even make cosmetic repairs, let alone ones that improve the efficiency of their home. And so that's also pricing people out of downtown. So I'm committed to making it easier for folks to have resources to keep themselves here in downtown Jersey City, to keep livability and longevity.
Good. All right. So this time we'll start with Jake. And the question is, do you support allocating a larger portion of the city's budget to health and human services and recreation?
So, yes, recreation is important. I'm confused by the question is, I think the question is based on misinformation that we cut the recreation budget, and we did. CARES dollars allowed recreation money to be supplemented. So because money was coming from the federal government, the Fulton administration was able to take some of our tax dollars back out of the recreation budget, but no recreation programs were cut. Do I support more recreation? Absolutely. Right now, we're expanding the main library here to have more after-school activities, including competitive chess. And as city prosecutor, I was very involved in youth court, which is an after-school program that teaches restorative justice to young people, teaches them to resolve conflicts in more productive ways, and also allows them to avoid traditional discipline in the school. Yeah, so yes, I'm supportive of recreation, and I do think it should grow as the city grows, because it is a way that we provide positive futures for children to stay involved and not on the streets, and I would support that, yes.
We are in full agreement. I also support more funding for health and human services and recreation. A couple of, I think, priorities where I'd love to see that go. First, we are obviously still in the middle of a pandemic. We have and continue to have challenges with vaccines. So I would continue to encourage us to spend money to address vaccine hesitancy, have as much as possible one-on-one outreach, trusted community members speaking to members in their community to encourage them to get vaccines. We are likely to see the rollout of vaccines for children 5 to 11. The Biden administration is putting plans in place, and our Health and Human Services Department is putting plans in place. And we want to, as robustly as possible, fund those efforts, and then ensure that the infrastructure of our Health and Human Services Department is ready for the next pandemic, whether that's a year from now or, God willing, I'm hoping a century from now, more than that. In terms of RAP, absolutely. There was recently created a rapid youth development division. There were some, I think, issues with the implementation, but the core idea is very, very sound. What we want to see is expanded team mentoring programs. We want to open the first true rec facility in the city. We want to expand youth job programs oftentimes run through that department and make sure that children have real opportunities to build their skills, build professional experience and expertise in the coming years. So full agreement that those are two core priorities for us moving forward.
Okay, great. So moving on. Would you be in favor, and we'll start with James, of campaign finance reform so more people can run for office in the future?
Yes, full stop. New York City has put in place what's called a matching fund system. And so for every donation that comes in, the government provides a 6-to-1 match. That has opened the doors to people running for office from non-traditional backgrounds. And I will commit to putting legislation forward in the next term that would try to put a similar system in place here in Jersey City. Now, too often we have what are called team accounts. Those enable for mass donations from PACs over $70,000 from individuals over $25,000. A campaign finance reform would try to put an end to those types of large mass donations. I think I've been really proud in my campaign to have a huge grassroots base. We've had over 1,000 donors support our campaign who live here in Jersey City, and the median donation they chipped in is $50. I'm extraordinarily grateful to their support, and it means so much to me to have them willing to sort of put their hard-earned money into my campaign to ensure that I can run as an independent. Now, I also made a promise. I made a promise 4 years ago, and I stuck to it in this campaign, not to take donations from Jersey City developers. Too often, developers donate to politicians either directly to their campaigns or to independent super PACs. And then after the election's over, they come calling for favors. I'm proud in the last 4 years that never happened because I never took their donations. And you can trust with me that that will never happen again in the next 4 years because there's not a single dime of developer money in my group.
Yes, that would be for local financing to make it easier for people of average means to run for public office. I'm very proud of the donations of mine that come from my family and my friends from all the work that I've had at various legal jobs, both private and public sector. With public financing, it would be a lot easier for folks like me that come from a regular middle class background to run for public office. And I just think it's important at this moment. The council talks a lot about developer donations, but when he does that, he really is demonizing developers. And I just want to talk about the fact that what he's demonizing is growth in downtown Jersey City. I moved here in 2005. In fact, one of my first apartments was right in 4th and Monmouth, not far from where the councilman lives. And the neighborhood has really changed and improved. When I used to walk down Newark Ave on my way home in the middle of the night and being out with friends, I would walk in the shoulder because I felt safer than the sidewalk. That's not the case anymore. Downtown has grown, the pedestrian plaza has grown. There's so many things that we have that were give backs to the community, whether it's, we have one coming up at Cole Street Park that's opening next week. That was a give back from developers. And we have public space, we have the library, we have Nimbus. These are things that are collaborative between the city, the community, what residents want, and developers. And I just want to say, Councilman, you keep putting out on mail that I talked about developers 2017, and sometimes you say it was at Hudson County View, and other times you say it was at PS3 when we had the debate. You're entirely inconsistent. You have timestamps on your mailer that don't line up with your video. And again, I just want us to focus on integrity here, and that's what I'm offering you: integrity and facts.
You care to respond?
So first, just on that point, twice during the 2017 campaign, both at the reading at the Portofino and at the debate with Hudson Media Group, you said you were proud that you didn't take donations from developers in 2017. Obviously, in 2021, that's changed. But I want to talk about the core, most important thing, which is we have ended, I'm proud to have ended the era of a developer plan downtown. You've seen the growth in downtown. 20,000 people have moved here in the last decade. That is extraordinary. But we didn't plan for the schools. We didn't plan for the parks and the open space. We didn't plan for the sewer and transit infrastructure. And part of the reason we didn't do that, the main reason we didn't do that, was because developers were calling the shots. Because developers were telling us what they were going to build. And that is not. It hasn't happened in my watch, and it certainly is not going to happen in the next 4 years. Now, if there's a project that works for this community, I'll support it. It's why I supported a project that's going to build an elementary school.
John, I just have to respond. This is the first time the councilman is referencing our debate at Portofino. I'm glad to know your memory is as good as mine. We really were to get back then. It was pre-COVID. There was a lot more debates. It seems like you have a hard time keeping up with your own statements because it's always changing. It's always fluid. The reality is, debate stopped a year and a half before you filed your first form to run for office. The reality is that the PS16 annex was the work of your predecessor, Candace Osborne, who today endorsed me for my common sense plan. Developers have been providing things long before you ran for office or even showed up in Jersey City. That's the kind of collaboration I'm going to have with developers because I'm not going to demonize anybody and leave them out of the room.
It's correct for the record.
I just want to correct the record on when the last abatement was given in downtown. The date down in my phone is 2015, but the exact date, February 9, 2017, the same year that Jake and I both ran for office. And the facts are clear. 4 years before I was in office, there were 39 tax breaks taken out, oftentimes given to developers selling $1 million condos who didn't provide nearly anything back to this community. In the last 4 years, it has been zero. And I can assure you, they asked, right? Newport came and asked for an abatement in 2019. We said no. Developer on Newark asked for an abatement. We said no. You have my commitment. No giveaways to developers, not in the last 4 years, not in the next 4.
Okay, so
we're going to start with Jake on this next one. So this is a little open-ended, but do you think this has been a clean campaign so far? Why or why not?
Well, I'm running on my own merits. I'm very proud of the work that I've done as prosecutor. When I came into office as municipal prosecutor, it wasn't a glamorous job. In fact, in most towns, it's a one-night-a-week job on a stipend. I've been able to do things that have helped people, like I said, in Jersey City, some of the most underserved, neglected people throughout the city, especially in the southern end of the city. But then also we've had an effect statewide. Also, you know, a lot of our policies that we enacted during COVID, myself, the mayor, the Health and Human Services Director, were slowly adopted statewide. In fact, some of our initial responses were so aggressive that the governor's office sued us, but we were doing it to keep our residents safe. That's what I really want to run on. But the reality is, I'm running a positive campaign, and my opponent is not. We saw him do it to Rebecca Sines 4 years ago, and he's slowly doing it to me. He has the personal wealth to send out as many mailers as he wants with misinformation. He can keep doing that, but I'm just going to run on the record that I have, which I'm really proud of.
Sure, yeah, and this race is 100% about, in the next 4 years, which one of us can make the biggest, most positive impact on your lives and downtown as a whole. And that's what I'm proud to be running on. So let me tell you a story, 2 stories about how we've done that in the last 4 years and how that's going to move in the next 4 years. 4 years ago, my friend Wendy, who lives on Pavonia Avenue, called me up and she said, I'm having real problems. The house next to mine has been turned into a party Airbnb. Every Friday, every Saturday night, it was a huge party. And I call the cops and they might break it up, but I can't stop Airbnb from listing it because it is legal. Right? I heard what Wendy had to say, got to work. Was proud to partner with Mayor Phillip and Councilman Quinn's area to pass legislation regulating short-term rentals, sensibly and smartly allowing homeowners to do it, but not allowing for big developers to buy hundreds of units as they were doing. And now, in that home next to Wendy, it's not a party Airbnb, it's our neighbors. And in fact, they send their kids to the same daycare as my daughter, Camille. That's the type of track record over the last 4 years that I've been proud to deliver. And we have to do more of that. The key quality of life issue I want to tackle in the next 4 years is trash. We see it on our streets. Our trash is trashing. And our trash pickup, the politically connected contractor has that pickup regional, is a disaster, right? We're trying to fire them. We weren't able to do it in 2020, but now the city council is moving forward, trying to look and study bringing trash contract back in-house. We've also put together a plan to put a trash can at every single corner in Jersey City, street corner in Jersey City, with daily pickups. And we're going to put bins on the trash can. I know that gets super wonky and excited to talk about trash, but that is going to make people's lives better. We're going to have a cleaner downtown in the next 4 years. Those are the types of ideas I want to keep talking about in this campaign.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about safe streets, and we'll start with Jake. Do you support removing street parking for protected bike lanes along neighborhood connections and main routes like Newark Ave, 6th Street, Montgomery, and so on and so forth?
Yes, you know, while downtown is sort of the crown jewel of bikeability in Jersey City, we have a long way to go. Not only am I a biker, I bike often to court for work, but I recently could kind of see it myself and learn it up close when on a handlebar ride along survey with members of the community and members of Bike JC. We still have many awkward and dangerous intersections that force bikers to make inconvenient and impractical choices between getting to their destination sensibly, but maybe on a street that doesn't have a protected lane and isn't as safe, or staying on the green bike lane that sort of goes out of the way at pastime. As councilman, I am committed to revisiting those routes, expanding those routes as much as possible, and making them safe. I've been proud to be a part of the work that the administration has done on Vision Zero over the last 4 years. We have traffic courts in Jersey City at evening is when our traffic courts are. That's one of my jurisdictions. We focused our high accident, high injury, high fatality intersections. All our traffic prosecutors have that information, and we focus on enhanced penalties for violations committed at those intersections. So I've been proud of the Vision Zero work, and I'm going to be very proud to be part of making downtown more bikeable and walkable for all.
I think there's 2 very pro-bike candidates on the stage, so yes is the answer. I am extraordinarily proud of the work we've done over the last 4 years to make our streets safer. 4 years ago, Jersey Avenue was one of the most dangerous streets in downtown. There was an average of 25 major crashes every single year. My friend Joel, who lives at Second in Jersey, would talk about hearing a crunch of a T-bone, right? As one car crossing Second with the car going north or south on Jersey. He does not hear that crunch anymore. He doesn't because we put in place stop signs. Stop signs seem simple, but they have dropped major crashes by 95%. And we don't know who's been saved by that. We don't know the person who hasn't been seriously injured or potentially killed. But those are the safety measures I am committed to put on every single street. Now we've added them on Graham Street and Green Street and Washington Street. But my commitment is to add them on Newark Avenue, Marion Boulevard, and Columbus Drive, 3 of the most dangerous streets still in downtown. And my commitment on that is that the question asks to put protected bike lanes on those streets, to put pedestrian bump outs on those streets, to make those bump outs rain gardens, so they also serve the purpose of sustainability for soaking up water, to put in leading pedestrian interval to make sure pedestrians have more safer crossing times, and to do everything in our power to ensure that we have safe streets for all users, bicyclists, pedestrians, and drivers alike.
Thank you. So let's move on to the next one. We'll start with Jake. Would you support the equity permit program that addresses disparities in the cannabis industry by prioritizing the victims of the war on drugs and minimizing barriers of entry into the industry?
I'm with white one.
Yes, when the city passed the initial zoning rules for recreational cannabis, our city planners did a wonderful job. They sought feedback from us as councilmen and sought feedback from all of you in the public. They had a really robust community outreach effort. And they changed their plans to make our zoning rules more equitable, and specifically to allow for more micro businesses to open. Micro businesses are the small businesses where you don't need tens of millions of dollars of capital that the big corporate marijuana companies have, that are much more likely to be opened by those who are harmed by the drug war itself. So we changed our zoning rules to allow for that to happen, and we are excited to see a lot of folks here in Jersey City try to start their businesses, homegrown folks here. And so for an equity permit program, I would be 100% supportive of us doing that. I also want to talk about what we did at the City Council with marijuana recreational tax revenue. We had 2 proposals. One was to put the money into our public schools to address the massive state cuts that are really, really harming our public schools. And the other was to fund social justice programs to aid those directly harmed by the drug war. We sat down and we worked out a compromise. I proposed it, worked with Councilman, President Waterman, Councilman Ridley, and we agreed unanimously as a city council to split the revenue 50-50. 50 for our public schools to help them address the state funding cuts, 50% to address social justice programs.
The answer is yes. Look, when cannabis stores come online, it is not going to be easy for any store runner. And that's not actually through the fault of the city in any way. It's really the fault of the state of New Jersey. The tax, although we're going to benefit from it, is very much high compared to other states. There's also enormous requirements for the brick and mortars, especially consumption lounges. The air filtration systems are going to add enormous overhead on the brick and mortars. And also because Trenton took so long to decriminalize marijuana, there wasn't enough crop, and we're having a supply and demand issue that when cannabis comes online, it's going to be far more expensive than other states when they came online. And what's going to happen is the big companies from Colorado and California are going to have a leg up, and they're going to come in and they're going to get the approvals first because they have the resources. We need to make sure that it's far more equitable than that. Like I said, I was 7 years as a public defender, and what inspired me to approach the mayor about becoming prosecutor and decriminalizing was because I was tired of standing next to so many clients. Monday was plea day, it was a status conference day. So many clients, particularly young men of color, pleading them to marijuana possession when I knew my white friends were doing the same thing the weekend before, right? So we need to make sure that there is equitable and that the people that are opening the stores are from the communities that were harmed by the war on drugs. We need to make sure that social justice programs include expungement clinics because there hasn't been as robust as an automatic expungement requirement in New Jersey as there was in, say, California. And so people are still having those consequences. And lastly, I think there is an education component needed for the public. You know, when consumption lounges were first talked about, I had a lot of questions, so I met with folks in the industry to learn how they are. And the state regulations are actually very, very strict, and they're going to be far safer in the community than bars are. There's license scanning requirements. There's amounts of time you can stay in the consumption lounge, and they're actually have far less of an effect on quality of life than some of our worst bars. So we need to let folks know that consumption lounges are actually not going to adversely affect quality of life.
Thank you. Anything further, James? Okay. All right, so we'll start with Jake on this one. So as we begin to see the rollout at the state level with and beyond with vaccines for children and as well as people getting their booster shots, what's your commitment to downtown and the rest of the city to try to facilitate this process?
One, we need to educate so that there's no stigma surrounding the vaccine. And two, you know, we need to keep making it available and accessible, which we have. Jersey City has been recognized across the state of New Jersey and even nationally as making it easy to, one, not only get tested in the beginning of the pandemic, but two, to have access to vaccines. And now we're already moving on to the boosters, and also for our most vulnerable residents, seniors and underserved. We have these sites throughout the city, and we've really been a leader in the state. And this is another area where the state has taken pages from our playbook. So I'm very proud to be part of the team, the public safety team, the mayor's office, and Health and Human Services. I think, you know, having been the person in charge of COVID enforcement, I think we also need to think about what were to happen if it happens again. We need to make sure that we have the technology so that the city is ready to snap into remote access so we can keep serving our residents if there is another lockdown. We need to make sure that we continue to have stockpiles of PPE and more testing so that we never have to go through the trial and error that we did. When the pandemic hit, I was one of 20 people reporting to City Hall in the initial lockdown. And it was a scary time, but I was able to see some really good leaders do work that really moved the ball forward for us. I was honored to be a part of that. And as councilman, I want to bring that perspective onto the legislative branch and make sure that we continue to address this pandemic effectively, but that we prepare for, God forbid, the rivers and everyone.
My commitment is to do everything in my power to support all of the efforts from the administration to ensure we're getting as many people vaccinated as possible. We know that vaccines are the way out, right? At the end of the day, when you don't have a portion of your population vaccinated, so they can continue to spread, and those who are vulnerable, those who are immunocompromised, those who are seniors who may be vaccinated are at risk. We just saw Secretary Powell pass away despite being fully vaccinated. So that is why it is so crucial that we get every single person vaccinated. I want to do similar work that I did during the pandemic as well. One way in which we really try to help people, the small businesses who are struggling. So there were two small businesses specifically that we helped. One was my friend Mona at Local. Her business was at the risk of being closed. She couldn't open indoors but wanted to open outdoors. The condo board where she rents from was refusing to let her use this gorgeous patio. So we worked to make sure she could open a parkroom. And then, that insult to injury, they wouldn't let her turn the lights on. So we worked with PSE&G to make sure that she could plug into those lights. Then, for more systemic change, we worked with a whole coalition of restaurants, including Billy at Delenios, to pass legislation to put caps on the third-party fees that Uber Eats, DoorDash, the Silicon Valley companies charge, taking 30% out of every order out of our community. We put that ordinance in place twice, both in May and then in January 21. And it made a huge, huge difference in their bottom line. That's the type of effort that we want to put in to ensuring that every single person gets vaccinated.
Very good. All right, so this will probably be the last one, and then we'll let you guys have your closing statements, of course, 2 minutes each. So, James, it's no secret that Hudson County and particularly Jersey City has a reputation for corruption over the years, the decades, the centuries. So is there anything you want to introduce that you'd like to be a part of on a local level to address ethics and perhaps anti-corruption legislation, anything along those lines?
Yes. So I put together an anti-corruption plan. You can read it on my website, solomonforjc.com, and it called for significantly strengthening the current ethical standards, both the boards and the rules in Jersey City. Now, why do we need to do it? We need to do it because we've had truly unethical people in city government. Look no further than Sudan Thomas, who ran a city school district for 2 years as the chairman of the board of trustees, and who then was appointed to run our city's workforce development agency. He was indicted by 3 separate law enforcement agencies. We've had city workers indicted, city workers in the rec department, the police department indicted in the last couple of years. That shows us, right, that there is a culture of corruption that still persists. Maybe not as bad as it once was, but still persistent. And so we put together a plan. We want to strengthen the current board that exists at City Hall. We have a board that's supposed to investigate ethics. It doesn't. It sits there, it barely meets. No one even knows when it shows up. The appointments to the board do not guarantee its independence. City workers are under no mandate or obligation to report corruption when they see it. We have to strengthen all of those rules. Now, I'm proud to be independent from the political machine and political establishment. So I can fight for these types of ethical reforms to make our city government cleaner, to make sure that taxpayer dollars are spent more effectively, and to make sure every city service performs better for you.
So, you know, the Sudan Thomas thing is very personal for me because I actually was on the JSEC board with him, and I voted no on him becoming the executive director. There was other folks from the Fulton administration on that board that voted yes. So, you know, and that wasn't easy for me, but I followed my gut, and I turned out to be right about the type of person that Sudan Thomas was. And I also am one of the people, actually I am the person that turned over the documents when we found out there was corruption on that board, because it was my obligation, one, not only as a trustee, but as a lawyer, but as the city's chief prosecutor. So when the councilman talks about him being sacrosanct because he's not part of the machine, I don't know what machine he's talking about. Because if you don't think it was tough for me to vote against it on Thomas being part of the Fulton administration, then, you know, go with him, he's got a bridge to sell you, right? Employees absolutely have an obligation to report misconduct. If they don't, it's called being a conspiracy to a crime. Again, I understand that my answers may not be as sexy as the councilman's, but that's because I'm dealing in grounded reality. He's citing the rec department directors. That was before he was a councilman. It was before I was a prosecutor. Where's the legislation that he thinks we need? Why did he wait 4 years until the autumn before re-election to say that we need a stronger board? Again, he's painting pictures for you because it's easy to look at. It fits in the character limit on Twitter, but when you go deeper, it's just not there. And that's what I want to offer you. Because as an attorney, I'm guided by a code of ethics that follows me everywhere I go, whether I'm in Jersey City, out of the state of New Jersey, home reading the newspaper, or in the courtroom doing my job. And that's the code of ethics that's going to guide me as your councilman next year. And I'm going to talk straight, and I'm going to give you the facts, and I'm not going to paint you a rosy picture just because it's convenient, and I might grab you a few votes with a shortcut. That's not what I want.
Yes.
Yeah, just to clear the record, the rec department person was arrested in 2019. Investigation started in 2018 with all the reports coming out. I was proud to bring a team of graduate students to Jersey City to study best practices across the country. They did a thorough report, you can read it, we put it online, talking about how other cities have beaten back corruption, have made true, genuine, lasting change. So, no, I'm not going to apologize for putting out a thoughtful anti-corruption plan. I'm committed to getting it passed. And you can trust, if you re-elect me, that we are going to see significantly stronger anti-corruption legislation in Jersey City.
John, those students were from the new school, and there's not
even an ethics program at that school. So why were those students qualified to comb through our books? What legal forms and NDAs did they have to comb over before the councilman just opened up city books to students from across the river, not even students here in New Jersey? So again, I encourage you, dig deeper every time he says something, every time you get a piece of mail from him, every time one of his supporters tweets something that at a quick read looks really good. Because I guarantee you, if you scratch the surface enough, there's not truth behind it.
students who are graduate students at the new school, one of the a very well-respected graduate program in studying public policy. They offered a very thoughtful report, which everyone can read. They interviewed experts across the country. They interviewed chief ethics officers in New York and Philadelphia. They went to the program at Columbia that is the leader in trying to improve municipal ethics. So again, I'm not going to apologize for bringing in really smart people to make our government work better.
We do have really smart people here in Jersey City, and you constantly demonize not only the people in Jersey City, but the workers of Jersey City. If you want to reach out to New York and Philadelphia, your former friends at Boston, then go back to those cities, because I'm proud of the work of Jersey City, the leaders in Jersey City. I don't focus on the bad apples because we prosecute them and send them away, but there are good people in Jersey City doing good things.
I am extraordinarily proud of the work that I do as a teacher in Jersey City. I teach at all three colleges here, Hudnut County Community College, JCU, and St. Peter's University. Many of my former students have worked in my council office because they're extraordinarily smart and talented. They are not members of the political machine. They don't make donations. They don't have to work their way up. They are what makes this city good. So I'm deeply, deeply proud to be in Jersey City. My wife Gabby and I, our 2 kids, we are extraordinarily lucky to be in this incredible city. And I don't think this type of sort of political exchange really adds anything to making your guys' decision about who to vote for, which one of us can do the most to make your lives better. So I'm happy to move to conclusions and get to the core of why we're running for office.
Okay, thank you, guys. As you can see, we're already a little past time. So Jake, we'll let you start with closing it out. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's valuable. I was a neighborhood association in this very room for the Harson's Code, a neighborhood association, and I know how hard it is to get folks out, but also how sacrifice your own evenings. So thank you. We're here because we love downtown, and we want to make sure that everybody can stay here as long as we want to. And between the rising cost of living and the rise in water from the coast, we need to take action now. I've demonstrated over the last 3.5 years that there's no problem that I won't tackle. And I've also demonstrated that I'm going to do it honestly and with integrity. That's what I'm going to bring to the city council. And you know what? I'm going to have to work with people I agree with, and I'm going to have to work with people I disagree with, just like I did as prosecutor. It was not easy sitting in that conference room across from the most powerful attorney general in the country and arguing with him that a municipal prosecutor for 2 weeks on the job had the ability to downgrade and dismiss marijuana. But we got there, and we left that conference room like 2 attorneys who had worked out a solution. That's who I am. That's who I'm going to be with the mayor when I need to fight for what's right for downtown. That's how I'm going to be with the council members when I need to fight for what's right for downtown. And that's how I'll be with stakeholders when I need to fight for downtown. And that may include developers. And I'm going to get from the developers the things that we need to move downtown forward and make sure that every young person can have the opportunity that I did in 2005 to move here and be able to afford to live here. That's why my plan talks on the middle class. But I want to make sure that those that bought here decades ago, or those that were born and raised here, are able to stay here too. That's why my policy is comprehensive of seniors, because I want to make sure that we all have the longevity and livability that we deserve. So I ask you to please follow along over the next week and a half, and I hope to earn your vote on November 2nd so we can move downtown forward with common sense, straightforward solutions.
Thank you, John, for moderating. Thank you, Jake, for the debate. Thank you, DCNA, for hosting. And thank all of you both at home tonight for your time and participation and your engagement in making downtown a better place. Right? I said this at the start, but I want to reiterate it. I am running to make sure that Jersey City has a government as good as its people. Right? For 4 years before I was in office, we saw tower after tower go up. And I had to ask a simple question: to whose benefit? Right? 39 times that developer got a tax break. But were they building affordable housing? Most of the time, no. Were they building new schools? Only once was the answer yes. Were they building new parks, the roads, the sewers, the infrastructure we need for a livable community? And we all see in our day-to-day lives that the answer was too often no. And I am proud to have ended that era of a developer planning downtown, to ensure that if any project moves forward under my watch, it delivers for infrastructure, new school, new homeless shelter, new light rail station, and to ensure in the next 4 years, we continue that progress. To get a third elementary school built, one north of the Holland Tunnel, so kids don't have to cross those access lanes, and to comprehensively address our overcrowded problem. To ensure that we get a new park on the waterfront to address the massive development without green space, and to triple the number of homes people can afford so long-term residents can stay in downtown. And so I ask for your vote on November 2nd to continue the progress we have for the progressive, representative, independent, and developers in the machine. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say, first of all, round of applause, please.